Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the last video on reproductive models. Last time we met, we were going through this model, but we had not yet sliced it open. It's now sliced open to let us see the internal structures of many of the things we looked at from the outside last time. So I don't want to review too much. I guess we'll review a little bit. We did see the vulva last time. We saw the mons pubis, we saw the labium majus, the labium minus, we saw the clitoris as well. The space that's enclosed by the two labia minoras, the space in here, is going to contain two openings, the external vaginal orifice and the external urethral orifice, plus you can find the clitoris anteriorly there. So, if we look at some of these internal organs now, for example, we can see the vaginal canal right here. You can see all the rugae that are present, all the folds that allow for expansion. The vaginal canal is going to go up and unite and meet with the cervix. The cervix is this portion of the uterus right here. This portion of the uterus right here is the cervix, and it is going to unite with the vagina. The cervix actually projects into the vagina, and that creates a space. And we see two portions of this space. The space as a whole is called the fornix. You may remember that word. There was a structure in the brain called the fornix as well. So the space around the cervix is called the fornix, and we see both a posterior and an anterior part of it. In another model later, we'll see a lateral part of the fornix. All right. I can also see the opening between the vaginal canal and the cervical canal. So here is the cervical canal right here. There's the cervical canal. Here is the vaginal canal right here. That's the vaginal canal. And right in between them, we are going to have an opening right there. That opening between them is known as the external os. Os, O-S, means mouth. So it's the external os. Now you might think, okay, if there's an external os, there's probably going to be an internal os. And you would be totally correct in making that assumption. So here is our uterine cavity right here. Okay, there's our uterine cavity. The uterine cavity is going to meet the cervical canal right here. And that particular spot is going to be the internal os. All right, speaking of the uterus, earlier I said that we had the cervical portion, which is basically right here. There is also a portion that's kind of rounded right here. That is the fundus. Remember that word fundus from organs like the stomach. Now, in between the two, in between the fundus and the cervix, so this part right here that I'm outlining in yellow, this part is the body of the uterus. So three parts to the uterus there. Now, we can also look at the three layers of the uterus. There is an outer layer, very skinny outer layer, called the Paramecium. Think about it as being like a parietal peritoneum overlying that uterus. There's the Paramecium. Then deep to that, there is going to be a smooth muscle layer, a muscularis externa more or less, and that is going to be the myometrium. That is a smooth muscle layer. And underneath that, there is going to be another layer, and it actually has two parts to it. So I'm going to put an arrow on both parts right here and right here, kind of the red and the tannish there. So that is going to be my endometrium. And my endometrium has two distinct parts. It has a part called the stratum functionalis, which lines the uterine cavity. That's the part that changes in response to hormones like estrogen and progesterone. It's the part that the developing embryo will burrow into in implantation. Now, under that, there is another layer called the stratum basalis, the base layer. So the stratum functionalis is the one that changes in response to hormones, grows thicker, and it's also the one that gets shed at the beginning of every cycle during menstruation. And then we need to rebuild a new functionalis, and that is the job of the stratum basalis. All right. What else can we see here in this sliced away view? We can see some, of course, urinary structures, urinary bladder with detrusor muscle, rugae in there. There's an internal urethral orifice, and right next to it I would have my internal urethral sphincter. And there's a ureter over there. Okay, I thought this was going to be the last video on reproductive stuff. I think I'm wrong. I think there will be another one. Oh well, more the merrier. All right, switching up to this stretched out view. A lot of good stuff going on here in this model. Internal genitalia is what we're looking at. We can see the ovary right there. It has a yellowish thing in it called a corpus luteum. You will meet that when we're doing the histology part. We'll talk more about the corpus luteum. The ovary is physically linked to the uterus by this guy right here. That's the ovarian ligament. Now, I can then see my fallopian tube draped over the ovary. Fallopian tube is this whole thing right here. Whole thing right there. Now, the fallopian tube doesn't actually connect with the ovary. The fallopian tube is open, and it's open near the ovary. And the fallopian tube actually has different parts to it. It has these finger-like structures, which we see right here. These finger-like structures are called fimbrii. One is a fimbria, many are fimbrii, and they are ciliated, and their cilia is going to sweep around the time of ovulation. Their cilia are going to sweep around the time of ovulation to help get the ovulated oocyte to go from the ovary and into the fallopian tube. Now the fimbrii come together to make a region called the infundibulum. So there's the infundibulum right there. The infundibulum, which is another word that you might remember from A&P1. There was an infundibulum in your brain as well. Then the next part of this fallopian tube, so basically starting right here, we are going to have this portion called the ampulla of the fallopian tube. The ampulla of the fallopian tube. That is where fertilization is likely to happen. Now, by the time the fallopian tube finally approaches the uterus, it starts to get narrow, and the narrow part that we see right here is called the isthmus of the fallopian tube. Remember, of course, from geography class, an isthmus is a narrow strip of land, and that is the isthmus right there. Okay, if we look at our uterus, actually we'll save that for next time, so we'll pick up and we'll do the uterus and a couple more things on this model. All right, see you next time. Bye-bye.